The film begins with a girl named Helen, whose parents have died and she now lives with her stepmother. Her stepmother makes her do all the household chores and forces her to always live in a dirty place. She always finds excuses to trouble her. The stepmother also has a pet puppy, which she loves very much. One day she asks Helena to comb her hair properly because the prince is going to come to the market today. Helena laughs on hearing this. This angers the stepmother, and she gives her the task of making a garland of feathers. She also threatens that if she does not complete the task, she will have to sleep outside at night. The stepmother reaches the market where the prince is passing with his convoy, but he does not even look at her. On the other hand, poor Helen is busy making wool from feathers. Even after working hard the whole day, she is barely able to make one bag, which makes her very sad. Sitting down tired, she starts remembering her mother. At that very moment, a fairy appears there, who promises to fulfill one of her wishes. Without wasting any time, Helen asks the fairy to turn all the feathers into wool, so that she can complete the work quickly. The fairy turns all the feathers into wool with her magic and then disappears. When the stepmother comes and sees the finished work, she is astonished because she thought that it was impossible to complete this work in one day. Later, she gives a piece of cloth to Helen and asks her to sew a beautiful dress for her so that the prince can like it. Helen works hard all night, but still cannot sew the dress. Tired, she remembers the fairy and requests her to make a beautiful dress. The fairy accepts her wish and creates a beautiful dress with her magic. Just then, her stepmother arrives there, and as soon as she sees the dress, she understands that all this must be the work of a fairy. With this suspicion, she takes Helen with her to the forest, as the prince is about to come there to hunt. Meanwhile, the prince goes hunting with his companions in the forest and gets separated from them. In the forest, at the behest of her stepmother, Helen builds a beautiful palace with the help of the fairy so that her mother can ensnare the prince and marry him. After this, her stepmother tries to take Helen to the basement of the palace so that she can lock her there. But Helen comes to know about this plan beforehand, and she flatly refuses to go to the basement. In anger, her stepmother tries to push her, but Helen retreats just in time, due to which the stepmother herself falls down and becomes unconscious. Seeing all this, Helen gets frightened and immediately remembers the fairy. The fairy appears and advises her to close the cellar door and brings Helen out safely from there. At the same time, the prince comes near that palace while roaming in the forest. He reaches the palace gate and says that he has lost his way and wants to rest for a while. Helen and the fairy do not know that he is actually the prince. The fairy thinks he is a common thief, but Helen listens to her heart and allows him to come inside. The prince comes in and asks for something to eat and goes toward the basement in search of the kitchen, but Helen somehow stops him and takes him to the dining room, where a lot of food is already kept. They both sit together and eat food, and slowly an unspoken love starts blossoming between them. The prince is also impressed by Helen's gentle nature and beauty and falls in love with her. He proposes to Helen for marriage, which Helen happily accepts. After this, the prince leaves for his palace and tells Helen that he will return here again by tomorrow afternoon. On the other hand, when the news reaches the palace that the prince is lost in the forest, the king becomes very angry. He starts scolding the soldiers and threatens that if the prince is not found, he will put everyone in jail. Then suddenly, the prince returns to the palace. Both the king and the queen are very happy to see him safe and sound. The prince tells them that he met a girl in the forest. Now he loves Helen and wants to marry her. Hearing this, the king's face hardens and he angrily reminds the prince that in his childhood, he was married to Princess Josephine of a neighboring kingdom. The prince becomes angry on hearing this, but the king explains to him that if this marriage does not take place, the people of the neighboring kingdom will get angry and may attack our kingdom. Seeing the seriousness of the situation, the king, without wasting any time, sends a soldier to Josephine's palace to give her the wedding invitation. The prince sneaks out of the palace wall and heads for the forest to meet Helen. Meanwhile, Helen spends the afternoon waiting for the prince in the palace. When he doesn't come, she becomes angry and goes down to the cellar and opens the door. Going inside, she tells her stepmother that the prince had come here, and now they both love each other. Hearing this, her stepmother becomes furious and insults Helen's father by calling him a fool. After this, Helen starts to leave from there. Then her mother starts chasing her. But the fairy has already built an invisible magical wall around the palace. due to which her mother is unable to get out of the palace, while Helen gets out easily. Now Helen moves towards the royal palace with the intention of meeting the prince and telling him the truth. Meanwhile, in the forest, the prince's horse gets badly scared after seeing a puppy and throws the prince down. Due to the fall, the prince becomes unconscious. After regaining consciousness, the prince searches for her and reaches the same fort where he met her earlier. Meanwhile, Helen crosses the forest and reaches the palace. After reaching the palace, Helen tells the soldiers that she is the prince's fiancée. Hearing this, all the soldiers burst into laughter and tell her that the prince is engaged to Princess Josephine of the neighboring kingdom, and they are going to get married soon. Helen is deeply shocked to hear this, and she returns to her palace with a broken heart. Meanwhile, the prince reaches the same fort in search of Helen. There he meets Helen's stepmother, who takes advantage of the situation and plays a trick. She tells the prince that after he left, the fort was attacked by thieves at night, and poor Helen died in that attack. She also says that she herself saw Helen dying with her own eyes. The prince becomes motionless. He asks his stepmother to show him Helen's dead body so that he can bid her a final farewell. To this, the stepmother says that the thieves had taken her body with them as well. Now the prince has to believe her words even though he doesn't want to, and he leaves the fort with tears in his eyes. Helen finds a baby goat while wandering in the forest. She takes it in her arms and takes it to a nearby shepherd. The shepherd is kind and allows the baby to stay with him. From then on, Helen starts living there and takes up the task of grazing the sheep while helping the shepherd. On the other hand, the prince returns to his palace with a heavy heart and tells his mother the whole story. He says that the girl he loved is no longer in this world. His eyes fill up with tears and he sinks into deep sadness. On the other hand, Helen starts living in that small house on the edge of the forest. At night before going to sleep, she looks up at the sky and remembers the fairy and tells her the state of her heart. She says that she truly loved the prince, but he betrayed her and is now going to marry another princess. The fairy listens to her and says that he is a prince, and according to tradition, he has to marry a princess only. Saying this, the fairy disappears from there with a mysterious smile. The next day, Princess Josephine arrives at the palace with her parents for the wedding preparations, but the prince is not at all happy to see them. As soon as he sees Josephine, he tries to move away, but Josephine follows him and takes him inside the palace for a talk. Meanwhile, the shepherd is taking his cheese to the market to sell it. Helen finds the cheese to be plain and ordinary, so she decorates it with beautiful flowers and leaves to attract customers. At the palace, the prince opens up to Josephine that he was once in love with a girl who has now died, and that is why he is sad. In the evening, the shepherd comes to Helen happily and tells her that because of his decorations, all the cheese has been sold, and today they can enjoy a good meal. Helen suggests to him that he can earn more money by selling the wool of the sheep, and he will not have to kill the animals. With time, Helen starts making clothes from wool. The shepherd goes to the market to sell these clothes, but one day when he falls ill, he tells Helen that she should get the credit for all this because the hard work is hers. So now she should take the clothes to the market. Helen goes to the market to sell the clothes, and the customers like the beautiful dresses made by her hands. Suddenly, the prince passes by, but Helen hides on seeing him because she has started hating him now. In the evening, Helen returns with a lot of money and tells the shepherd that she no longer wants to go to the market or stitch clothes. But the shepherd says that he has a lot of pain in his back and he cannot go to the market, so Helen will have to go. The next day, Helen goes to the market again to sell clothes. That same day, Josephine comes to the market to shop and is very impressed by the dress Helen has stitched. She orders her soldiers to bring the girl and all the clothes she has made to the palace. So Helen is forced to take her clothes to the palace. Josephine asks her how she stitches such beautiful dresses. In response, Helen says that stitching clothes is her hobby, and she has not learnt this art from anyone, but has learnt it herself. At that very moment, the prince is entering that room, so Helen gets scared and tries to quickly escape from there by hiding her face with clothes. Josephine tries to stop her, but Helen gives her the clothes she made and returns from there. On reaching home, Helen sits sadly in a corner and crying tells the shepherd that she has sold all her dresses to Princess Josephine, who is now going to marry the prince. She further says that she never wants to go to the palace again because she has started hating the prince. Hearing all this, the shepherd convinces her that she must go to the palace. Agreeing to his words, Helen goes to the palace again the next day and starts fitting all the dresses. Josephine likes Helen's behavior, and she asks Helen to wear a beautiful dress and stand behind her at her wedding so that she can look even more beautiful. Helen agrees to stand behind Josephine for the prince's happiness. The next day, when she stands behind Josephine at the wedding ceremony, the prince notices her, and he is surprised to find that Helen is alive. Seeing this, the king becomes angry and orders the soldiers to take the girl away from there immediately. The prince tells Josephine in front of everyone that this is the girl he loves and about whom he has told her earlier. He immediately runs to Helen and tells her that his mother had told him that she is dead. But Helen does not believe him and says that he is a liar and a coward who left her and is now making excuses. Saying this, she leaves from there. The king threatens the prince that if he does not return to the wedding immediately, then there will be serious consequences. But the prince refuses to marry and leaves the palace. Helen is watching all this, hiding behind the trees. Then Josephine comes there and tells her that the prince truly loves her. After this, she gets Helen a buggy and sends her to his fort. The prince enters the fort, where he meets Helen's stepmother. She is now mad, lost in loneliness and regret. She looks at the prince and says that everything she said about Helen that day was a lie. She did not see Helen die. Then suddenly she pounces on the prince and shouts that he will now live with her forever in this palace. But then Helen comes from behind. Without wasting any time, she hits her stepmother on the head with a vessel kept nearby, due to which she falls unconscious on the ground. Now the truth was completely revealed. Helen understood everything. She forgives the prince. After this, both of them return to the palace together. The prince stands before the king and says that he will marry only Helen. Josephine also understands the situation and convinces the king. In the end, the king agrees to their marriage. After some time, the prince and Helen get married with great pomp. I'm just a hard-working creator, trying my best, pouring my heart and soul into every video. If you found even a little bit of value or joy in my work, please consider subscribing to my channel. That one small subscription means the world to me and gives me the strength to keep creating. I'd be so grateful. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.